I've got a ministry called Solidify Your Faith, and I like to help people solidify their faith in the Bible by looking at science. And today, I was just blessed yesterday. I went to a funeral in La Crosse, and there's a little rock garden at the end of it, across the street, and it says, "This is the day the Lord hath made, and we will rejoice and be glad in it." And then I got up this morning, and this is what I saw at Pastor's house. "This is the day the Lord hath made, and so let us rejoice." And so let's rejoice. You know, let's use this day God's given us. We have our freedoms. Thank you for somebody who's just went through the crucible. Is it Leo, I think?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Leo. So thank him on the way out. He's the one who's protecting our freedoms. And so we need people like that. And what a blessing. You know, it's a crazy world out there, and I look at it, it's a mess because there's a battle between God's truth and Satan's lies. And ground zero for that, I believe, is creation versus evolution. So if we can get that issue settled, a lot of the other things are going to fall in place. And just so blessed to be able to speak here. It's always fun to meet Pastor when across Pants Cross. And if you could, you know, just think of the summer he's gone through. I mean, this thing didn't have a roof for 6 weeks, and it didn't rain. It was just amazing. You know, the storms would go around it, and also with Nate. And if Nate, if you're watching, hi, thumbs up to you. And so if you can be a blessing to Pastor and his family, I think they would really encourage that. And let's dive in right now. This is an hour-long talk. I'll just give you some of the highlights. And this is Colossians 2:8. "Beware lest any man spoil you." That's rob you. We're getting robbed of the joy that God has for us. We're getting robbed of the stuff that he wants us to do. How? Through philosophy. That's lover of knowledge, you know. And vain deceit. That's empty lies. That's what we're going to look at this morning. We're going to take a look at a lot of empty lies. Because there's two perspectives of the past. One is based on blind chance, like thinking this podium got put together by blind chance, which is absurd. How much more absurd is it to think our bodies got put together by chance? But that's what is being taught in every government, school, museum, and media. That's what's being pounded. And if that's all you ever see, you just memorize. And so what I'm trying to do is give people another perspective of the past called creation, and then you can start thinking. So that's the main thing we're going to be talking about. And then how else, after the tradition of men, after the rudiments of the world, and the rudiments, that's the basics of the world, like ABCs is the basics of English. And the rudiments of the world, I think, is, you know, what this whole world philosophy is based on, no God. And I'm trying to help people realize that's an absurd position, and then not after Christ. So we're using the creation to point people to the Creator, and then they can put their faith in Christ, and I think that's why there's so much resistance to it. So let's start with the kingpin himself, Ernst Haeckel. Anybody ever heard of him? He was a contemporary of Darwin. He loved the theory, but there wasn't any evidence for it. And so he made these drawings, these Haeckel's drawings. So that's what he made, those drawings. You see, it doesn't matter if you're a chicken, a rabbit, or a human. Yeah, you all look the same. And I was shocked when I saw that in our 2024 school textbooks, and we'll cover that a lot in the next hours. But it was a fake. It was a fraud. You know, that's what they actually look like. And it's a fake, and it's still in the textbooks today. And you can see Haeckel's frauds and forgeries as after a century of exposed fraud, it's in our textbooks, and I can account for that. 2024 textbooks still have images of that. And in 1874, his own scientific peers began to reprimand his false data. In fact, his own university in Germany censored him for his continued academic dishonesty, but the popular media of the day sided with Haeckel, since it told them what they wanted to hear, no more answering to God in the Bible. So there's nothing new under the sun. Even 100 years ago, the media was anti-God. But he confessed in 1908 in the Berliner Volkszeitung, whatever that is, and you can read it. And he says, "I begin at once with a contrite confession that a small fraction of my numerous drawings of embryos, perhaps 6 or 8%, are basically frauds." He just made it up. And he says, "After this compromising confession of forgery, I should be obligated to consider myself condemned and annihilated if I had not the consolation of seeing side by side with me in the prisoner's dock hundreds of fellow culprits, among them many of the most trusted observers and most esteemed biologists." So basically he's saying, yeah, I did it, but so does everybody else. And it goes on to say in that article, "If true, we have here the greatest blow ever struck against the reliability of scientific men and against the current method of pushing the evolutionary theory. If true." So he's saying, yeah, I did it, but everybody's doing it. How would we know if that's true? We said it that's true, but what he's saying true? Well, we would have to have somebody check the accuracy of all the drawings and the exhibits and see if they're accurate. We need somebody to go to 15 countries, 5 continents, almost 300,000 miles, over 250,000 photographs, and do it over 27 years. Anybody want to do that? Oh yeah, and you're going to have to fund it yourself, 40 grand a year. So it's 1.2 million, and if they would have hired somebody to do it, it would have been 14 million. But we don't have to do that because Dr. Carl and Debbie Werner did. That's what they did over their lifetime. This is their life project. And they just came out with 3 books at the beginning of 2024 in March, and we're going to show you a lot of them. And I encourage you to support their cause. This is from their first 2 books, or one of them, Living Fossils. And basically he falsified evolution twice. He had one theory that said, you don't prove something, you falsify. If you can prove it false, then it's not true. And he says, if evolution's false, I should find, modern animals in with the dinosaurs. And that's exactly what he found. He found all 3 groups of fish living today, both major amphibian groups living today, all 4 reptile orders living today, and most of all birds living today, and all 3 types of mammals living today. He found them all in the dinosaur layer. And so he falsified it. And he found, they visited 60 museums, but they didn't see a single complete mammal skeleton with the dinosaurs. And they found 432 different types of animals that should be there. So just understand that museums are the churches for the atheist. That's where they go to get their unbelief solidified. And so they're not showing you what they find in the ground. They're showing you what they want you to believe. Millions of years before mammals, that's when the dinosaurs are. And he actually got this text. They used to say that Rhodocetus was an ancestor to whales. This is from a 10-year-old textbook, and this one's from 2012. They'd have Rhodocetus, but he interviewed the guy who found him. And I'll skip the interview, but in the exhibit, at the University of Michigan, I believe, it shows that the Rhodocetus is an ancestor for whales, and it had a fluke tail and flippers. And then he admitted, no, we didn't find any of that in the evidence. And so that was an interview that got that taken out of there. And then he predicted that if evolution was not true, then animals and plants would not change significantly over time. Accordingly, I predicted I should find fossils of modern animals and plant species in the older fossil layers. And that's what he found. It says, from a museum, it says, gars haven't changed much during the last 100 million years. Yeah, that's because they didn't evolve. And notice those 2 shrimp there. And notice in the red letters what they're called. Those are the scientific terms for those 2 shrimp. They look identical, but the scientists don't think they're the same species or the same genus, and that's how they've got these 2 Latin words, one for genus, one for species. So like the horse and the donkey are the same genus, and the same species as the horse. So those are 2 Latin terms. And you got this. Do those look like the same species? Anybody think so? How about the same kind of animal? Guess what? They're both Canis familiaris. Anybody know what that is? Both dogs. Yeah, you can have the long nose of an Irish Wolfhound or a pushed-in one with the bulldogs, and then so you can have that much variety within a kind, and yet when they look identical, they call them something else. So notice how the fossils look the same, but the scientific words in red are different. And he thought it was just, well, maybe a scientist just had a bad day. He didn't realize it. But this, without exception, the fossil ones look identical, but the scientists do not think that they're the same. And he's got, again, that's this whole book, Living Fossils. I encourage you to go through it, buy it, use it for gifts, get the videos. It's just shocking how all this stuff is, they're the same, but scientists will not look at it. Okay, or they'll never change it. Now let's jump into human evolution. This is what he just released in March. And so he went around and he interviewed scientists and he took pictures of their fossils, and he writes a just high-quality book. It's a great coffee table book. It's just full color, just incredible how he put it together, and very well written. And on this page it says, spoiler alert, these are the different, on the left there, those are the ape men, supposed ape men, or ape-like ancestors. And he says, spoiler alert, it may come to somewhat of a surprise to learn that all 5 ape men, seen on the previous page, were created using ordinary non-primate mammal bones. 40 professional scientists promoted these ape men, which were made using dolphin, cat, dog, hippo, pig, pig, horse, donkey, raccoon, and the cow family bones. These scientists held 43 university professorships. Professing themselves to be wise, they became fools. You know, maybe that's why they call professors. And they chaired 15 university science departments, founded 14 natural history museums, directed 13 natural history museums, and authored more than 4,500 scientific journals, and just goes on and on and on. And these are the experts that are telling us that, hey, yeah, we came from apes, but they're using dolphin bones and cat bones. And he goes on to talk about it, and he goes through the Scopes monkey trial. Do you remember that? That's when William Jennings Bryan, he ran for president 3 times, but he didn't win, but everybody knew who he was. And he called out the evolutionists in a New York Times article. And he says, basically, he charges that American teachers of Darwinism make the Bible a scrap of paper. Because when you teach any form of evolution, you're saying God didn't do what he said, or he didn't mean what he said. And if you open the door to that, well, maybe he didn't mean what he said about anything else. And it's a very slippery slope, and we've seen Europe just fall off the edge with that. And so he did this article calling out evolution, and then he called out the president of the New York Museum of Natural History. This was Henry Osborn. And he's kind of ticked off that he's getting called out publicly. And now it's a public debate. What's an evolutionist? How is he going to respond? And he responds with an article. He's kind of upset, but it's pretty milquetoast, you know. And then lo and behold, a month later, here comes this ape-man tooth. They call it Nebraska Man. And he put together his dream team. And just think if he's got any bias here. If Dr. Osborn was correct in interpreting Cook's fossil tooth, that's the Nebraska Man, the importance of the discovery for evolution and the positive publicity generated for the American Museum would be enormous. But if he was wrong, the negative fallout for the museum and the public's acceptance of evolution would be crippling. So do you think he's got some bias to call this an ape-man tooth? And so he put together his dream team of the best experts who could contradict him. They're all on the same team. And then they just submitted these drawings of the tooth. And there were some European scientists that said, that's not evidence. We need to see X-rays. And so they call him out publicly. And Osborn, what did he say? Dr. Osborn did not sufficiently make his case for an ape-man. There were no photographs of the fossil, no X-rays, only pencil drawings. And so what did Osborn respond? He reminded his London colleagues of the heated battle raging in the United States over the controversial topic. Remember, publicly, New York Times? And any unfavorable comments from the London scientists regarding the fossil would undermine the theory of evolution and jeopardize this hard-fought public relations battle. And that's what it is. It's not science. It's a PR battle going right now. And the scientists in Europe were pretty much told, hey, be quiet. Just hold it to yourself. Don't say anything bad, because you're going to shoot yourself in the foot if you're an evolutionist. And so from that one tooth, and these are books, illustrations from the book. It's just phenomenal. And you can get the PDF online or the Kindle, but PDF is a lot more photographic. And so this is the Illustrated London News. From that one tooth, they made the whole ape-man, his wife, and their tools from that one tooth. You know, and if you need imagination to be a good evolutionist. And then at the New York Times, they jumped down on the godless perspective, Nebraska ape-man of the Western world. And then the Scopes monkey trial is a couple of years later. And Bryan was confronted with a battery of great scientific experts who stunned him with the facts of Nebraska Man. And how many of these experts thought a dolphin tooth was from a man or a cat? And the experts scoffed and made a mockery of him. Oh yeah, have you ever meet scoffers at the Bible? You just thank them. You know, the Bible said you'd come. You know, there will be scoffers walking after their own lusts. You know, the Bible said you'd be here, so thank you. You proved the Bible correct with your attitude and mocking him. After all, who is he to question the world's greatest scientific authorities? And then years after the trial, the tooth from on which the Nebraska Man was constructed belonged to an extinct species of pig. Okay, so in 2022, there it is. That tooth pointed to an ape-man. Then the Scopes monkey trial goes through in 2025, and the whole world listens to it. And the evolutionists actually lost the case, but they won the case of the court of public opinion. And so everybody thought, well, evolutionists, they must be right. And then in 1927, they said, oops, our bad, it's from a pig. Okay, and Dr. Werner, he says, that's not fraud. That's a mistake, okay, or incompetence, I would call it. But he says what is fraud is they lied about when the tooth was found. They said they found it a year ago, and it was actually 5 years ago, because they would have had to answer, well, why didn't you bring this up 5 years ago? And then they also didn't show the pig jaw that was found like 8 years before that. So there's 2 cases of fraud in that one exhibit, and he says he's found 150 frauds in human evolution, and he only got to look at 10% of the fossils he wanted to look at. And so we just have to be very skeptical of that. So he falsely found it, but we just discussed that with you. Was he fired, that Osborne guy? Did he lose his job? He got promoted. He did that fraud, and he got, in 1927, after they found out it was a fake, he was elected president of the American Association for the Advancement of Science, the highest honor that U.S. and Canadian scientists can give a colleague. And he was on the cover of Time, even though he was wrong, even though he made the hugest blunder. But that doesn't matter when you're doing the case of public opinion, and that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to get this into the case of public opinion so we stop looking at those people, taking their advice. Then here's the Tong child from South Africa, where this Dr. Dart, he was mentored by this guy named Elliot Smith, who was also part of the Piltdown hoax. That was the skull of a human and the ape and the jaw of an ape. That was a fraud. He was also part of the Neanderthal. They said those were ape men when they're actually human. And then he's part of, so he's got all this, he knows how to make ape men out of anything, really. So he took this chimp, this chimp skull, and turned it into an ape-man skull. And he was reprimanded by a lot of people, but he was rebuked. But what happened to him? He was promoted, appointed dean of the Facility of Medicine. So if you promote that evolution theory, even though you lie about it, you might get promoted. And then they made this ape man out of all these different bones, from a dog to a baboon to monkey to cow to horse and feline. They put them all together and make an ape man. And then he told his colleague, he said, he's on his deathbed, and he told his colleague, never let the truth get in the way of a good story. So there's a big story going on there called evolution, and evolution is false, so you can't teach something true to support that something's false. So they have errors in our textbooks which prop up evolution, and we'll cover that next hour. And then this is Orsi man. This is from Spain, where they found Europe's oldest ape man. It was all over the place, 300 articles and TV and radio coverage. And then they cleaned up the inside of it, and they found this ridge, and it turns out that's from a donkey. But are they going to go public? I mean, they got some reasons for it to be an ape man, not a donkey, because they were having this big conference. There was 500 people coming into that place for this big ape man conference, and they got a lot of notoriety. And now there's economics involved. That's the claim to fame. Everybody's going to come to that small town. It's the mecca of paleontology. They got a bigger budget, and he was going to get royalties for it to be an ape man. And they were saying, you got to come out and call it a donkey, but they wouldn't, and so somebody else did. And so the media had a heyday. They said they reported embarrassing error headlines such as, another word for donkey is ass taken for a man, scientists make an ass of an old skull. And so the international conference with all those 500 people was quickly and quietly canceled, and they never had a press conference. But he's got this good old boy club. The problem with a lot of anthropologists is that they want so much to find human ape man that anything becomes an ape man bone. And so he's got this good old boy club. Basically, I'll call yours an ape man, you call mine an ape man. And that Orsi man still shows up in all these journals after it was proven to be a donkey. And so the museum's still there, but the curator says that most of the people don't believe it is human, especially the paleontologists. So just because it's in a museum doesn't mean it's true. And then we talk about Lucy and how they've got curved hands and feet. And then the co-discoverer of Lucy, he said that the knee was an ape. And Dr. Carl Werner said, no, I've never heard that before. He said he almost fell out of the chair. So the co-discoverer says it was an ape, but Dr. Johansen says that it was a human one. And this is what they did to turn it from a chimp into a human one.
The perfect fit was an illusion that made Lucy's hip bone seem to flare out like a chimp's. But all was not lost. Lovejoy decided he could restore the pelvis to its natural shape. He didn't want to tamper with the original, so he made a copy in plaster. He cut the damaged pieces out and put them back together the way they were before Lucy died. It was a tricky job, but after taking the kink out of the pelvis, it all fit together perfectly, like a three-dimensional jigsaw puzzle. As a result, the angle of the hip looks nothing like a chimp's, but a lot like ours.
Yeah, I hope so. If you cut it apart and put it back together. So instead of changing the theory to fit the data, they changed the data to fit the theory, and that's not the only time. This is Dr. Clark. This is the guy he's talking about was the one that said, "Don't let the truth get in the way of a good story."
Philip Tobias summoned me to his office, and he said, I want you to make a new reconstruction of STW-53. And I said, oh, why? And he said, well, I'm not happy with the brain size, it's too small. And I said, but that's the way it is, it can't be made any bigger. The anatomy shows that was the size of the brain case. He wanted it to be a Homo habilis. In fact, he kept publishing this as a Homo habilis. He then asked a research fellow that he just appointed there, Darren Curnow, he asked him to make a new reconstruction. And what Curnow did was he separated out this near contact here. He separated it out by 8 millimeters and made this wider. He flexed the parietal occipital contact here. He flexed it upward to make it bigger. He took apart other pieces as well and expanded it, and he moved this frontal bone forward to make it very elongated. It's totally false, because there was no justification for what they did. It was simply Philip Tobias's ambition to make this into a Homo habilis.
Right. Again, they changed the data to fit the theory. You don't get money for finding apes. You get the money for finding ape men. So this is what it was. On the left is what he had put together, and then on the right is what they wanted. And so again, they did that. And so how does this happen? They deny us access to the fossils. We're just taking their opinion of it. And the people who do the peer-reviewed journal, they've got the blind chance perspective. They don't have a creation perspective, or they won't be in that position. And so there's plenty of times when he couldn't get to things, but how do you fix this? Is to make sure that, hey, anybody can access the fossils. And also he said that I refuse to publish any article about fossils unless the author first places high-quality color photographs of the original fossils in the public domain. And also let people look at them, make them available for inspection by anyone, and then make the dig site notes available in the public domain. And then if anybody doesn't do that, then you ban them from publishing ever again in that journal. He said that's how you fix it. He says because there's a lot of fraud there and people don't trust them, and rightfully so, I would say. Yeah, and this is from Dr. Walt Brown's book. That's in the back. It's in the 9th edition. You can get it online, but not in print, so that's a pretty rare one back there. But it goes on to say about this interview between an evolutionist and a reporter. And George, nobody I know in my profession truly believes in it evolved. It was engineered by genius. They're talking about the DNA. It was engineered by genius beyond genius, and such information cannot have been written by in any other way. The paper and ink did not write the book. Knowing what we know, it is ridiculous to think otherwise. So obviously there was a creator for our DNA. And this is what the microbiologist or whatever it is says. And then he said, but you just told me, because they were saying that it just came together by chance. And he says, to be a molecular biologist requires one to hold two insanities at all times. One, it would be insane to believe in evolution when you can see the truth for yourself. Two, it would be insane to say you don't believe in evolution. All government work, research grants, papers, big college lectures, everything would stop. I'd be out of a job or relegated to the outer fringes where I couldn't earn a decent living. So that's what's happening. They don't believe it personally. The evidence doesn't say it, but they won't say it because they're going to lose their job. And there's a book in the back, Slaughter of the Dissidents and Silencing the Darwin Skeptics. There's another one, Silencing or Censoring the Darwin Skeptics by Jerry Bergman. He just over and over and over again. But where do you see an idea like this? I finally read 1984 this year. I've been hearing about it my whole life, so that, well, we better find out. It's not that great a book, but here are the highlights. He says, who controls the past controls the future, and who controls the present controls the past. That's why there was so much censorship lately. They're drawing a picture of the past, and if you contradict it, you're going to get censored. And that's how I see who's in charge. You know, creationists were censored for decades, and then doctors were censored during COVID when they were saving people with ivermectin. And now it's the people that criticize Israel, like Candace Owens. And she said, you criticize Israel, you're going to get fired. And they proved her point by Daily Wire. They fired her that day. And so, again, my thing is you got to see all the information. And I'm very interested in what's being censored. And then it goes on this double think. You know, they had to believe two insanities at the same time. It's to know and not to know, to be conscious of complete truthfulness while telling carefully constructed lies. That's what's happening in evolution. That's what that biologist is saying. You know, you couldn't have evolved to hold simultaneously two opinions which cancel out, knowing them to be contradictory and believing in both of them. And then it goes on to say, the party told you to reject the evidence of your eyes and ears. It was their final and most essential command. And that's what's happening today. Hey, that's not a guy in a dress, that's a woman. It's like, no, it's a guy in a dress. You know, and so, and basically follow the money. You know, grant money is needed to pay the scientists' salaries and attract others to work for them. So let's take a look at this guy, see what he has to say.
But if you falsify your data, if you do not believe that there's anything wrong with bearing false witness to your colleagues in the scientific community, because you'll get more funding, we have a problem, and this is getting worse. I know people doing this in the field of genetics get more funding. They fudge the data about some of their research, but it's not true.
Yeah, and that's from Twin Cities Creation Science has that. And there's another one, Dr. Jerry Bergman, I mentioned him earlier.
Problem of fraud in society, it's a, quote, a serious, deeply rooted problem that affects no small number of contemporary scientific research studies, especially in the field of evolution. And I should add, especially in the field of medicine. Of all places where forgery should not be is in medicine. Why? I don't know if any of you worked for medical school, but I have. And a lot of professors there, they don't get paid by the medical school. They get grants, and their salary comes from the grant. Well, if you don't get good results, your grant's not renewed. And so it's a matter of, can you feed your family? Or, hey, I will just tweak the results a little bit. So there's a strong incentive today for forgery in science. And so therefore there's an epidemic of forgery in science, and in medicine especially.
And he's got 9 degrees. He knows, and he was an outspoken atheist. He wrote articles for the atheists. Madeline Murray O'Hare loved his work. And then he became a creationist. And it's fascinating. I encourage you to go into YouTube on the TCCSA YouTube channel. You get to see these clips. And there's highlights of each speaker, too. And their whole talk is there. And it stands for Twin Cities Creation Science Association. And it's like a little library. You want to see what they have to say about astronomy, or biology, or geology. You can see a creation perspective of that topic. And if you don't have time to listen to the whole talk, we broke it up into highlights. And Jerry Bergman's is a must listen to. Man, he's so good, especially when he gets off notes, gets off track. Just brilliant, all his experiences. And then Jay Seeger's got a real good one, and there's a lot of evidence with the hydroplate theory that's making accurate predictions. And oh yeah, this is also what Dr. Walt Brown, and I'm a big proponent of this. He said, widespread belief systems seldom change when frequently reinforced by influential institutions such as the universities, media, religious institutions, and the scientific and intellectual elite. That's what's happening, folks. But when a vast number of people realize they've been misled, the intellectual revolution begins. And that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to get a vast number of people to realize that we've been misled. And so then we can, hopefully people get informed and then informed others, and we get this snowball effect going where the general population just isn't going to believe that blind chance perspective anymore. And then we can take away their power, because they have the power. They don't want things to change because they got the power. But if a vast number of people realize that the emperor has no clothes, there's no evidence for molecules to man evolution, then we stop funding their crazy tests and they lose their power. And so that's what our job is. And what I'm trying to do is, how do we get people to do something? You know, a lot of people have the information, but how do we get them to do something? And I think it's, you know, we just have to go out there. The layman would be willing to, you know, who cares what people think? And that's what I think a lot of it is. What do people think? Well, it's like, who cares? Who cares what people think? There's a battle going on for the hearts and minds of the next generation. And let's wrap this up we'll get done. Beware, okay, there's a battle going on. What are you going to do? Are you going to have any war stories in heaven? You know, that's what I'm looking forward to. And if this ship does sink, I'm not going to be going down in the ship thinking, man, I wish I would have done this, or I wish I could have done that. Man, I'm doing everything I can, and I hope you get to be, or I hope you're doing the same thing too. And I appreciate, you know, your pastor letting me share these ideas. And next hour, we're going to talk about the errors in our textbooks and my conversations with the school board, and see what's happening there. So I think beware, know that the battle's going on, know that there's vain deceit, empty lies, and you can see a lot of those on my YouTube channel called Solidify Your Faith. Make sure everybody takes a card at the back there. We just need to do something. Let's see, one last story. I spend a lot of time on campus, and a psych major came up, and he's like, why do you do this? And I said, if you saw a blind person walking towards a cliff, would you warn them? He goes, absolutely, yeah. And I said, well, that's what I see. I see people who are blinded, and they're walking towards a cliff, and if they go over, they're going to spend an eternity in hell. And they can go to hell if they want to, but they're going to have to reject my message first. They're going to have to consciously reject my message. And so with that, Jesus said, I'm the way, the truth, and the life. No man comes to the Father but by me. And he also said, if I have told you earthly things and you believe not, how will you believe if I tell you of heavenly things? So we need to know what God says. We need to know the lies of the devil. We need to get equipped, and we need to influence others for Christ. And thank you so much for the attention.